This series was presented by the National Dropout Prevention Center, a division of SPN, the Successful Practices Network. Improving attendance to reduce learning loss was presented to the South Carolina Department of Education by Dr. Sandy Addis, chairman of the National Dropout Prevention Center.
Today, let's look at this whole issue of attendance, particularly as it relates to learning loss. Take a minute to consider this quote from one of our recent publications. The impact of pandemic school closure on students, educators, schools, districts, and communities is likely to be the greatest education challenge of our lifetime. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. The greatest education challenge of our lifetime, and that we're beginning to see that that's what it's becoming. We thought we were squared away a few months back, and now the COVID issue is running rampant through our population, and it's also hitting more and more young people, more and more students. And I know that many of you in your districts are grappling right now with how do we start, how do we resume, how do we make this work for students. And so here in Anderson, where I am, they've got at the hospital, which is a pretty good sized hospital in Anderson, the emergency room waiting area is a tent outside the hospital. And many of the students that are in the hospital with COVID, or many of the patients are students of ours. So this is a big issue and a big challenge. Think about some of the post-pandemic challenges for schools. They fall into sort of short-term and long-term categories. We've got school resumption, logistics. How do we start school back? How is it safe to start? Do we have to, close one school, one classroom? Do we have to go virtual for a week? That type of thing. Just the logistics of school resumption. Health and safety measures. Not only do we have to figure out the health and safety measures to get our kids back in, but then we've got the communities, and as many of you know, the public is in places in South Carolina is up in arms over what schools are doing or not doing, and it almost seems like there's no right answer. When we do something, people are upset. I'm here in Anderson, South Carolina. I'm a school board member and on the Anderson School District 5 board. And we've had protests at our board office over some of the measures we're trying to take to keep students safe and healthy. We've got to recover lost students. We've got students that have disappeared on us. And now that we're starting back to school, we've got to find them. And we certainly have the learning loss recovery. How do we catch up the academic side of what students have missed? And those are just the short-term challenges. Then if you look at the long-term challenges, we've got lost student engagement. Students have been out of school at times and they disengaged from us. We know that in South Carolina, the homeschooling and the private virtual schooling that parents are opting for has doubled at least amongst our students. We've got more at-risk students. Many students that were not at risk before COVID now are. They've had other challenges. And so our at-risk population is larger and more at risk. And then we've got deteriorating quality metrics. Here we are, accountable schools, and we're going to see our attendance rates go down most likely. We're going to see our graduation rates go down. We're going to see student achievement measures go down. We've already seen that in some of the data that's been recently released. So we got our hands full, both short and long term, but there's another issue: disrupted attendance patterns. And this is one that we can't ignore. We have attendance. We had attendance pretty well in hand before COVID, but now all that's disrupted. And so let's take a look today at what can we do and how do we go about establishing and reestablishing good attendance patterns, particularly after the shutdowns and after the pandemics, and how do we use better attendance to overcome learning loss. Attendance patterns and norms have just been blown out of the water. You know, we as educators have for years have preached attendance is holy, attendance is important, attendance is critical. We've made laws about it, we've made local policy about it, we've had local school practices and procedures and policies within each individual school about it, and we've preached it to the kids, we've preached it to the community, we've preached it to the parents. But all of a sudden, some students were unable to participate in attendance. They couldn't attend. And they couldn't participate fully in virtual instruction. Virtual instruction, as we tried to do it in different districts around the state and all over the country for that matter, it was all over the board. We had, in some places, we had districts that were ready to go virtual. They had Chromebooks in every kid's hand. They had teachers that had been trained in virtual instruction, and so they wouldn't have to do snow days and such as that. So all they had to do was just turn it on, ramp it up, and go full blast. But then at the same time, back a year ago, we had schools where virtual instruction was staff members stapling together worksheets and handing them out at the front door of the school as parents came by to get them for their kids. And so virtual instruction was not universally available to every kid. And that was really what attendance amounted to. Attendance monitoring and truancy enforcement mechanisms were totally disrupted. And if you don't believe that, you can ask Aveen. Districts were trying to figure out at the end of last year and all during last year, last school year, what do we count as attendance? What is attendance? Is attendance signing on? Is attendance being, how much virtual participation equals what used to be face-to-face attendance? And then we got into those issues. Well, if we had a truancy enforcement mechanism in a district, do we enforce it? How do we enforce it? What counts? What's attendance and what's not? And student and parent and community assumptions about attendance have been totally disrupted. We said for years, you must attend. You have to be in the seat in the class. That's what matters. And then suddenly we said, well, no, you can't do that anymore. And that really doesn't matter that much because we got this virtual stuff for you. And so now we're not so sure what people are believing about attendance. Do kids believe the same thing they believed about attendance 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Do parents and community members believe the same thing about attendance being in the seat in the classroom? Do they believe the same things? If you don't think that's an issue, turn on your local TV station. I assume you probably see in different parts of South Carolina what I'm seeing. You're watching the local news at 6 o'clock and the ads come on for virtual schooling, privatized virtual schooling. School didn't work for you, sign your kid up for this. And so basically they're saying real attendance as we used to define it is not the issue. That's not what matters anymore. So this has been a real challenge for our students. What was the primary impact of the pandemic on attendance of your students? What was the primary impact of pandemic on the students that you serve or that you work with or that you're responsible for?